You have been lied to for hundreds of years. What if Sophia Alexeyevna was erased from history not for usurpation, but because she tried to stop the reboot? Why is there a crown on her portrait, even though she was never crowned? What inscriptions were physically destroyed on this portrait? Why were princesses hidden in buildings with 6-meter ceilings? Who started the Streltsy uprisings 3 times, exactly on time, exactly with the desired result? And why did Peter I so urgently replace her on the throne? Subscribe to the channel. Ahead is the truth about the portrait that should not exist, about the tarems for giants, and about the last ruler of the old world. Russian Museum, Mikhailovsky Castle, room 209th. Before you is an image that should not exist according to all the laws of official history. A portrait of a woman. On her head, a crown. Not the ancient monomach cap worn by Moscow czars, but a real imperial crown of Western design, like those minted in the Holy Roman Empire. In her right hand, a scepter. In her left, an orb. Symbols of absolute power held only by crowned persons. Below the portrait, a double-headed eagle. But this is not the usual Russian coat of arms. Look more closely. Above the heads of the bird rise 3 crowns, not 2, as is customary in the Moscow tradition. On the eagle's wings are 6 medallions with allegorical figures. Each is labeled piety, virginity, mercy, justice, fortitude, meekness. In its claws, the predator grasps a sword and a palm branch, ancient symbols of war and peace. Around the entire composition winds a golden inscription, Autocrat of Great and Little and White Russia. The name of this woman is Sophia Alexeyevna. The date of the portrait's creation is the year 1700. But there is a problem. This woman was never crowned. That is what official history claims. Sophia was merely a regent for her underage brothers. She was overthrown and imprisoned in a monastery as a usurper. But then, where does the crown come from? Where do the scepter and orb come from? Where does the imperial title come from? Compare this portrait with the image of Leopold I, Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. The same double-headed eagle, the same 3 crowns, the same medallions on the wings. Identical imperial symbolism. This is not a coincidence. This is a visual statement. Sophia possessed legitimacy of the same level as the Emperor of Europe. And now, lower your gaze to the bottom part of the portrait. There are 2 medallions. Empty. There used to be inscriptions in them. This is visible from the framing, from the structure of the composition. But the texts themselves have been erased, physically destroyed. Who did this? When? And most importantly, what was written there that contradicted the new version of history so strongly that it required complete destruction? The official museum website places a terse phrase under the portrait. Most images of Sophia were destroyed after her conspiracy was revealed. But if they were destroyed, why was this portrait preserved? And why is it dated to the year 700, 11 years after her overthrow, when she was already locked up in a monastery? To understand this paradox, one must go back to the beginning, to the system in which Sophia's rise to power was absolutely impossible. The Moscow Tsardom, 17th century. Women of royal blood, invisible. Historian Ustryalov describes their life. No monastery could be more modest than the Tsar's chambers. The Tsarevnas spent their days in deep seclusion, in prayer and needlework. No outsider's gaze ever penetrated their chambers. Only the patriarch and the Tsarina's closest boyar women had access to them. Doctors were invited only in cases of severe illness, and even then, they were not allowed to see the patient's face. This is not a description of the life of princesses. This is a description of a prison. The Tsarevnas went to church through hidden passages, hiding behind grills. If they went somewhere, it was in closed carriages with covered windows. The people knew them only by names from church exclamations, but no one saw their faces or heard their voices. Harem. A word resonant with harem, and not by chance. The same system of isolating women that was practiced in the East. But there is one more reason that historians do not talk about. Enter the old chambers of the Moscow Kremlin, the Harem Palace, where the Tsarevnas lived. Look up. The ceilings reach a height of 5 and in some places 6 meters. The doors are such that an adult woman of average height cannot reach the upper doorframe, even standing on tiptoe. The door handles are located at a level where a modern person's chest or even chin would be. The windows start where the height of a normal room ends, at 3 or 4 meters from the floor. To look out of such a window, a stepladder is needed. These spaces were not built for people who are 150 or 160 centimeters tall. Architecture is always functional. No one makes door handles where it is inconvenient to reach. No one raises windows to a height from which it is impossible to see. Unless the building was constructed for those whose height significantly exceeded that of a human. The Romanov dynasty came to power in the year 1613, but they did not build these palaces. They inhabited them. They occupied already finished buildings, erected by the civilization that existed before them. And they faced a problem. The new inhabitants were too small for these spaces, especially the women. Imagine a princess 1.5 meters tall in a hall with ceilings nearly 6 meters high. She looks like a child who accidentally wandered into the adult world. She gets lost in these volumes, and the people who still remember the previous inhabitants of these palaces might ask uncomfortable questions. Why are the new rulers so small? Why do they not match the scale of the buildings they live in? Therefore, they were hidden. The harem system was introduced not only for the sake of Eastern traditions, it was a necessity. Women of royal blood could not be shown to the people because their mismatch with the architecture would reveal the truth. The truth that the new dynasty were impostors in foreign palaces, that they were not the builders of this grandeur, but merely temporary occupants who took over the empty chambers after the catastrophe. The harem became a cage not just for isolation. The harem became a way to hide the physical mismatch of the new rulers with the buildings they had appropriated. Covered windows with patched cloths, impenetrable drapes, the prohibition for doctors to see faces. All these were elements of one system, a system of concealment. And here Sophia appears in this system. She is brought out of the harem. She is shown to the people. She appears in public, conducts negotiations, receives ambassadors. This breaks all the rules. But to accomplish the task, drawing Russia into European wars, a visible ruler was needed. A puppet that could be shown. Sophia was brought out because she was needed. She was educated, prepared, taught governance not out of love for knowledge. She was prepared as a tool. For 7 years she was in the spotlight. For 7 years she played a role. And when the role was played, when the task failed and a new performer was needed, she was hidden again. But no longer in the tower, in the monastery, in Novodevichy, where she would spend 15 years behind stone walls, becoming invisible again, disappearing once more from the people's view. The system worked. Sophia was shown, used, and removed, and the walls of the towers and monasteries kept the secret that the new rulers were strangers in giant palaces built not for them. Marrying a subject was forbidden by custom for a Tsarevna. Marrying a foreign prince was hindered by differences in religion. Here is a real case. Count Waldemar lived in Moscow for 1.5 years, courting the Tsarevna. For 1.5 years, the groom and bride were in the same city and never saw each other even once. The wedding did not take place. All Tsarevnas were doomed to remain unmarried and enter a monastery. Ustryalov calls them hermits of the world, not at all familiar with state affairs and completely incapable of giving them any direction. He adds a key phrase: the least one could expect was a storm from their quiet chamber. This system worked for centuries, rigid, unchanging, immutable. And now an exception appears in it. Sophia Alexievna, daughter of Alexei Mikhailovich, not the eldest daughter, the third of 13 children, an ordinary Tsarevna, doomed to the harem and the monastery. But in the year 1682, the impossible happens. This woman leaves the Tarim and takes power into her own hands. How? Let's look at her family. Alexei Mikhailovich had 16 children from 2 marriages, 13 from his first wife, Maria Miloslavskaya, 3 from the second, Natalia Naryshkina. Among them were future czars, Fyodor, Ivan, Peter. And here is the paradox. All the boys in this family were sick, frail, weak, with epileptic seizures. Fyodor inherited the throne after his father. He ruled for 6 years and died at the age of 20, leaving no heirs. Ivan was practically blind, had seizures, and was unable to speak clearly. When the question of succession arose, the boyars openly stated that he could not reign. Peter also suffered from seizures in childhood. Later, he was tormented by convulsions and sudden rage. 3 sons, 3 future czars, and all 3 with serious illnesses. And the daughters? Healthy, strong, lively. Especially Sophia, smart, educated, energetic. No mentions of illnesses. She will live for 46 years, 15 of them in captivity under extremely harsh conditions. And she will endure. Where does such a contrast come from? Historians attribute this to close-kin marriages, degeneration of the dynasty. But the Romanovs came to power only 2 generations ago. Where did such rapid degradation come from? In the year 1682, Fyodor passes away. Childless, ill. There are 2 heirs, 15-year-old Ivan, disabled, and 10-year-old Peter, a child. Behind Ivan stands the Miloslavsky clan. Behind Peter, the Naryshkin clan. The struggle for power begins. And then a coincidence happens. May 15th, the Streltsy Rebellion. Thousands of armed Streltsy burst into the Kremlin. They demand the handing over of the boyar traitors. A massacre begins. The Streltsy deal with the Naryshkins right on the palace steps. The rout lasts several days. Result? The Naryshkin clan is destroyed. Natalia Naryshkina is removed from power. 2 czars are placed on the throne simultaneously, Ivan and Peter. And their sister, Sophia, is appointed regent for them. A woman who just a month ago was sitting in the Tarim suddenly becomes the ruler of a vast state. The official version states, "The Streltsy rebelled because of injustice. Sophia showed courage, went out to the rebels, and calmed them down. For this, she was asked to become the regent." But look at the details. The Streltsy rebelled at a very convenient time, exactly when the Naryshkins were celebrating victory. The rebellion started as if on command. The Streltsy killed selectively, specifically the Naryshkins and their supporters, as if they had a list. Sophia was prepared for the situation. A woman who had spent her whole life locked away suddenly shows political wisdom, negotiates like an experienced diplomat. And most importantly, the rebellion led exactly to the result that Sophia needed. This is not a rebellion. This is a coup d'etat, carefully planned and masterfully executed. Sophia has been in power for 7 years. Formally a regent, in fact, the sole ruler. Her portraits are minted on coins. Her name is in state documents. Foreign ambassadors negotiate with her. This is an unprecedented situation for the Moscow Tsardom. And here is the question. What did she do during these years? Historians describe her reign as relatively calm. Several decrees, ordinary governance. But there is an exception. In 1686, Russia signs the eternal peace with Poland. The 13-year war ends. Russia receives Kiev, but there is a condition. Russia undertakes to organize a campaign against the Crimean Khanate. Undertakes. Not can, not wants. Undertakes. What is happening in Europe at this time? The year 1683. The Ottoman Empire is besieging Vienna. The capital of Austria, the heart of the Holy Roman Empire, is on the verge of falling. The Holy League is formed. The Pope blesses the war against the Turks. Austria, Poland, and Venice join the alliance. But they are not enough. A force is needed to strike the Turks from the east. The eternal peace is the recruitment of Russia into the Holy League. Russia must attack Crimea to divert Turkish forces from the European front. And Sophia signs this treaty. She takes on obligations that will require enormous resources and bring no benefit to Russia. The campaigns begin. The year 1687, the First Crimean Campaign. The army, more than 100,000 people, 120,000 wagons, 200,000 horses, grand resources. The result? Failure. They did not reach Crimea. Steppe fires, heat, lack of water. People died from thirst and diseases. There were no major battles. Golitsyn returns and reports victory. Sophia rewards him, passing off failure as success. The year 1689, the Second Campaign. Again, a huge army. They reached Perekop, but did not storm it. They returned back. Again, victorious reports. Again, rewards. Why? These campaigns brought neither territories nor glory, only losses. The answer is obvious. Sophia was consolidating her reign, fulfilling obligations to those who brought her to power. The Holy League demanded an attack on Crimea. Sophia attacked. Twice. But for her, these failures became fatal. Peter is growing up. He is 17, an adult czar. Sophia realizes that time is running out. And suddenly, rumors of a new Streltsy rebellion. They say the Streltsy want to overthrow Peter and proclaim Sophia Tsarina. Peter flees to the Trinity Sergius Lavra. He gathers troops. Sophia tries to maintain power. But the Streltsy, who brought her to power in 82, are now silent. They side with Peter. Why? She did not lose on the battlefield. She lost in high politics. The Crimean campaigns failed, which means she did not fulfill the task. The European puppeteers need a new executor. September of 89. Sophia is overthrown. Imprisoned in the Novodevichy convent. Golitsyn is stripped of everything, sent into exile. Sophia will spend 15 years in captivity, until the end of her days. She will be guarded as a dangerous criminal. Visitors will be forbidden, correspondence prohibited. But there is a strangeness. She will not be forcibly tonsured. She will not be removed. They will simply erase her from history, destroy images, distort her reign as a period of turmoil between two real reigns. And then another event will happen. The year 1698. Peter is in Europe, on the Great Embassy. He is learning shipbuilding, meeting with kings. And suddenly, the Third Streltsy Rebellion. The Streltsy rise up, demanding the overthrow of Peter and the return of Sophia. Peter returns. The purge begins. Thousands of Streltsy are executed. They are tortured to force a confession that Sophia organized the rebellion. Executions are public, demonstrative. Peter himself takes part. Bodies are hung on the monastery walls, under Sophia's cell windows. This is a message, terrible, bloody. The old world has perished. Those who tried to preserve it have been destroyed. The Streltsy army has been disbanded. A tradition that existed for 1.5 centuries was destroyed in months. Regular regiments of the Western model will replace it. Who were the Streltsy? Just an archaic army? Or the last warriors of old Muscovy? Those who still remembered how it was before the arrival of the new dynasty. Sophia will remain alive, but her name will become synonymous with usurpation. Her reign will be called a time of troubles. Portraits will be destroyed. All, except one. With a crown, scepter, and orb. With erased inscriptions. Let's gather the threads. A woman who was supposed to stay in the harem suddenly becomes a ruler. The Streltsy uprising brings her to power at a very timely moment. The eternal peace drags Russia into European wars. The Crimean campaigns are senseless, but necessary for someone in Europe. A portrait with imperial symbolism. Faded inscriptions. 2 versions. Sophia was specially prepared for power. She was brought out of the harem and given an education. The Streltsy uprising was an organized coup. The eternal peace was a deal. Russia was drawn into the Holy League. The Crimean campaigns were the fulfillment of an order. Golitsyn was an agent of influence. The portrait with the crown was a sign of vassalage. When she failed, she was removed. By the same method by which she was brought in. Peter came to replace her, younger, more obedient. Or another version. Sophia represented the old elite, the remnants of the system that existed before the new dynasty. The Streltsy supported her because she was one of their own. She represented the old order. Peter was an agent of the West. He was raised by Europeans. He was sent to Europe to be turned into a conduit for foreign interests. When he returned, he began to break everything old. He executed thousands of Streltsy. He disbanded the old army. He moved the capital to a new city on a swamp. He forced the boyars to shave their beards, wear European clothes, and abandon traditions. Sophia resisted. That is why she was removed. Her images were destroyed. She was erased from history. She was the last one who tried to preserve the old world. Which version is true? Maybe both. Maybe Sophia started as a puppet, but tried to play her own game. Maybe she was on the side of the old elite, but was forced to make a deal with Europe. But what if everything was even more complicated? What if Sophia was neither a puppet of Rome nor a random usurper? There is a version that chills the blood and explains all the oddities of her biography. Sophia was being prepared, in secret, against all the traditions of the chambers. Someone from the old boyar nobility, someone who still remembered the times before the arrival of the Romanovs, took the risk. She was taught Latin when other tsarevnas barely knew how to read Church Slavonic. She was introduced to European politics, maps, and the principles of state governance. All this was done covertly, under the guise of ordinary girls' amusements and needlework. Why? Because the old forces understood. The Romanov dynasty was leading Muscovy to ruin. 6 czars, degenerating bloodline, complete dependence on European puppeteers. Someone was needed who could turn the situation around. And that someone could only be a woman. Because women were watched less, they were considered incapable of politics. The Streltsy uprising of 1682 was not spontaneous. It was a carefully planned operation by the old elite. A strike against the Narishkins, a clan completely controlled by the West. The installation of Sophia on the throne through formal regency. An attempt to return Muscovy to the old order, to ties with eastern lands, with the remnants of that civilization which on maps was called Great Tartary. In the first years of her reign, Sophia tried to play independence. She strengthened the positions of the Streltsy, the last troops loyal to old traditions. She supported the boyars against the rising westernizers. But in 1686, the reckoning came. The eternal peace with Poland and the obligation to fight against Crimea. Sophia found herself in a trap. To refuse the treaty meant admitting weakness, losing the support of even those boyars who saw hope in her. To sign it meant betraying the old world, breaking the last ties connecting Muscovy with Tartary. She signed it. But perhaps she tried to sabotage the execution. The Crimean campaigns are remarkable failures. Huge armies, colossal resources, and 0 results. They didn't even reach Crimea. Not a single major battle. Golitsyn led the troops through the steppes and returned back. What if it was intentional? What if Sophia gave orders to formally fulfill the obligation, but in fact not to harm the southern lands, where the life of the old world still lingered? The European puppeteers are not fools. They quickly realized that Sophia was playing a double game. The first failed campaign could be attributed to difficulties. The second failure was already suspicious. And when it became clear that she would not accomplish the task of destroying Crimea, she was removed. The Streltsy Rebellion of 1689 was not spontaneous. It was a surgical strike. Sophia was dismissed. Golitsyn was exiled. Peter came to power, a young man completely raised by Europeans from the German quarter. And Peter brought the matter to an end. The Azov campaigns of 1695 and 1696 were successful. Azov was taken. The mass execution of the Streltsy in 1698 destroyed the last old army. The transfer of the capital to St. Petersburg finally severed Russia from its eastern roots.
Sophia tried to resist. She tried to preserve the remnants of the old world. But she lost. And for that, she was not just removed. She was erased from history. Images were destroyed. Her reign was rewritten as a troubled period of illegal usurpation. Because her story is the story of the last resistance. The last attempt to save what was already doomed. A portrait with a crown and erased inscriptions. Possibly the last greeting from those who were on her side. Those who wanted the memory of her not to disappear completely. Those who knew the truth. One thing is certain. After Sophia, Russia changed irreversibly. Peter completed what had been started before him. Old Muscovy perished. The Streltsy, the last warriors of the old world, were destroyed. A new era began. The Moscow Tsardom of the 17th century stands on the brink of disaster. Sophia ruled from 82 to 89. In a few decades, the Great Reset will occur. The clay flood will bury the first floors of buildings. Cities will become empty. The old civilization will disappear. New inhabitants will begin to dig out the buried palaces and claim them. Sophia was part of this system. Maybe a victim. Maybe an accomplice. But certainly a witness to the last days of the old world. That world, whose traces are erased so carefully. Her portrait with a crown is not just an image. It is a window into that era when something could still be changed. When there were still forces capable of resistance. Two medallions with erased inscriptions remain silent. But their silence is more eloquent than words. Sophia was erased just like faces on statues were erased. Just like frescoes in cathedrals were painted over. Just like cities were renamed. She was inconvenient. Her reign did not fit into the new history. Therefore, she was turned into a villain, a usurper. But the portrait remained. With a crown, scepter, and orb. With erased inscriptions that once told the truth. I do not claim to know the exact truth about Sophia Alexeyevna. I am not trying to convince you of the only correct version of events. My task is to show you facts that do not fit into the official history. A portrait with a crown that should not exist. Erased inscriptions hiding something important. The Streltsy uprisings happening too conveniently. Crimean campaigns failing too strangely. Chambers and buildings for giants. All of this is reality, not fantasy. Documents, museum exhibits, architecture, they will not disappear even if textbooks remain silent about them. What to do with this knowledge is up to you. You can close your eyes and continue to believe the convenient version. You can start searching further, asking questions, comparing dates and events. The truth is not on the surface. It is hidden in details, in inconsistencies, in what people prefer not to talk about. Look at history more broadly, from different angles. Do not accept anything on faith just because it is written in a textbook. Doubt, search, compare. And the truth will reveal itself to you from the most unexpected places. In erased inscriptions on old portraits, in the height of the ceilings of ancient chambers,
in strange coincidences that stop being coincidences when you begin to see the whole picture. Subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to click the bell so you don't miss new investigations. There are still many mysteries and discoveries ahead. We will continue to look for clues, ask uncomfortable questions, and explore what official science avoids. Because the truth is always nearby. You just need to want to see it.